about making sure we have fair competition. The NCAA has long-standing policy that provides a more inclusive path for transgender participation in college sports. Our approach, which requires testosterone suppression treatment for transgender women to compete in women's sports, embraces the evolving science on this issue. And look, and I'm not going to repeat them. We've talked on this program about scientific reports and findings that say it doesn't matter how much suppression of testosterone that you take, the muscle mass, the bone structure, everything, it doesn't matter. They're still bigger and faster and stronger than women. I know, okay, you can go out and find an individual case where a particular biological female is bigger and stronger than a particular biological male, but I'm talking about overall. A recent study published by the British Journal of Sports Medicine found that after a year on hormone therapy, trans women still had an athletic advantage over cisgender women. The statement further noted that when determining where championships should be held, only location where hosts can commit to providing an environment that is safe, healthy, and free of discrimination should be selected. In other words, states that have sought to protect women's and girls, allowing them to compete on a level playing field, will be barred from hosting events, championship events. And this says that you don't even have to have passed the law. What this says that if you're considering a bill that would say, no, we're not going to allow biological males to compete against biological females in sports in the NCAA. You just have to be considering a bill for that. Well, guess what? North Carolina has House Bill 358, which I think is a great bill. The bill's summary, an act to enact the Save Women's Sports Act to protect the opportunities for women and girls in athletics by ensuring women are not forced to compete against men playing on the women's sports teams. It goes on to say, and again, this is out of the summary, requires express designation based on biological sex of all athletic teams for middle and secondary students participating in interscholastic or intramural athletic activities by a public school unit as one of the following: 1, males, men, boys; 2, females, women, girls; 3, co-ed or mixed. Mandates that athletic teams or sports designated for females, women, or girls not be open to students of the male sex. Requires recognition of sex based on a person's reproductive biology and genetics at birth only. Goes on to say prohibits governmental entities, licensing or accrediting organizations or athletic associations or organizations from considering a complaint, investigating, or taking an adverse action against a school or a public school unit for maintaining separate athletic teams or sports for students of the female sex pursuant to the article. It goes on to say, and by the way, this would start 21-22 school year, goes on to say, similarly, enacts Article 38, biological sex-specific athletic teams, to GS Chapter 116, defines institution of higher education as a constituent institution of the University of North Carolina, a community college under the jurisdiction of the State Board of Community Colleges, or a private college or university located in North Carolina. So I'm assuming from the summary of this bill, this would be applied to universities and colleges in North Carolina. Again, this all had just come out in the last 24 hours. Now, the bill, the North Carolina bill, was actually introduced back on March the 22nd. So this has all transpired within the last several weeks. The NCAA announcement just happened yesterday. But consider this. I mean, East Carolina University very well could be hosting a regional for baseball and perhaps a super regional. I mean, they've got a great baseball team this year. So does this mean that East Carolina University could not host a regional or a super regional based on what the NCAA has said? and based on the fact that North Carolina, and listen, I am not talking down this House Bill 358. Now, I know there's going to be people out there, we got to get rid of that House Bill 358 so we can make sure East Carolina can host a regional or super regional. No. Let's common sense prevail. I mean, the same people that keep talking about data and science, let's follow the data and the science. And did you see that there was an article out just a few days ago, NPR, that tried to propagate the idea that biological males, there's no scientific evidence that they're any more athletic than biological females. The garbage that is being peddled by the media and liberals in general and these institutions of higher education, these enlightened people. I know I'm just a little peon. I'm not one of the enlightened ones. But you talk about war on women. That is you're going to ruin women's sports. In high school and junior high and college, you're going to ruin it. War on women. Totally infuriating. Kudos to the North Carolina House for introducing this bill. Again, I don't know whether it's going to pass or not. I would think it would, and I think Cooper would veto it. But this needs to be passed. And shame on the NCAA. Blackmailing. Trying to force just like they did with HB 2, just like they're trying to do to Kristi Noem up in South Dakota. She caved. Totally infuriating. News and Observer is reporting a trial that started Monday in Raleigh will help decide whether North Carolina voters will need a photo ID the next time they vote. This is the state-level trial over the constitutionality of the 2018 voter ID law. No elections have been held since the law was passed in 2018. The trial is expected to last multiple days. Monday's schedule included opening arguments from both the plaintiff challenging the constitutionality of the voter ID and the legislators who are defending it. Your honors, voters will be harmed by this law, Allison Riggs of the Southern Coalition for Social Justice, the lead attorney for the challengers in this case, said in her opening arguments. And they are disproportionately black. They are voters that face barriers to voting already. They are voters who were targeted by the previous laws and this law an attempt to keep black North Carolinians from voting because they have to have a voter ID. Again, this is totally racist. How dare this individual, Allison Riggs? I mean, basically what she's saying, if you're black, you don't have the ability to go out and get a voter, a form of legal identification. You ought to, if you're a black individual, you ought to feel highly insulted. You can't do it. We got to look out for you because you can't do it on your own. That's exactly what they're saying. And we played that audio last week from Ami Horowitz going up to East Harlem. Every black he interviewed had an ID and thought it was ridiculous. They even asked the question. They don't have the ability to go down to the DMV and get an ID if they don't have one. David Thompson, the Washington firm Cooper and Kirk, representing the GOP, shot back saying, "We acknowledge the deeply lamentable and indeed shameful history of racial discrimination, but SB 824 is not a part of that history. It is the state-of-the-art voter ID that seeks both to secure elections and guarantee access to all registered voters." The trial is actually being live streamed on the Wake County Superior Court page on YouTube, allowing anyone to watch. People who are interested in reading the evidence after it has been filed can find the documents at the Wake County Courthouse Cases of Public Interest webpage. The article goes on to say there is a racial aspect to voter ID laws since white people are more likely to have photo IDs than other voters. That is from the News and Observer. That is just the furtherance of this racist lie. I mean, it is unbelievable. What century are these people living in? And why would you be pushing this? Why would you be pushing this narrative? Because you want to cheat. It's that simple. We got to take a timeout. Lots more to talk about. 561-8255. Love to hear from you. We'll be right back.
This is your Drive at 5 and ENC with Tom Lamprecht. Welcome back to News and Views on Talk 96.3 and 103.7.
All right, welcome back in. Time to take a look at your weather forecast. And, well, it's a chance of rain tomorrow. Looks like mostly sunny through most of the day. As the day comes to a conclusion tomorrow, the chance of precip is about 40%. And as we get into tomorrow night, the chance of rain goes up to 70%. Tomorrow's high around 77. And so tomorrow's not bad. And then Thursday, chance of rain is 30%. Otherwise, we're going to have sun coming in and out. And it's going to be a little windy on Thursday. So all in all, not too bad. Weather brought to you by our friends at Ironwood Golf and Country Club, voted best golf course in Greenville 2 years in a row. Ironwood Golf and Country Club boasts an 18-hole Lee Trevino design course, full-service dining and outdoor pool, tennis, and more. Our newly renovated 15,000-square-foot clubhouse is the perfect place to make new traditions with your family. For a limited time, join Ironwood, pay zero initiation fees. Give them a call at 252-752-4653. Find out what makes Ironwood the best of Greenville. 252-752-4653. Be a part of the best Ironwood Golf and Country Club. 561-8255. Is it Daryl? Daryl is on the line. Hey, Daryl, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing great. Good to hear from you.
Well, two things. One, I would prefer McCrory. Okay.
Okay.
And
Why is that? Why is that? What?
Well, I just like him, and I thought he'd done a wonderful job as a governor.
Okay. All right. All right.
I just think he has the man set to do what needs to be done.
Okay. There you go.
And the second thing is the males participating in female sports.
Yeah.
Which I just think is a bunch of malarkey. I don't agree with it. But you also got to go way back when they started letting females compete in male sports. So, and I thought that never should have happened. I mean, so you need to eliminate both, because unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but that's the way God created. There's two genders, females and males, and girls never should have been participating in the boys' sports then either.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. There is obviously, though, the female, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying the female is obviously overall is not going to have the physical abilities that the male is going to have in terms of size, in terms of speed and body mass and bone structure and those kind of things. So they're at a disadvantage. Obviously, if you flip that and just said, okay, we're going to let guys play in girls' sports, there wouldn't be any girls' sports after a very short period of time, and that's ultimately what's going to happen with the trans movement into sports. But yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
All right, Daryl. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thanks for your input. 561-8255. Students at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. were asked by Campus Reform what they thought of the Georgia voting law. And as you can imagine, Georgetown, any of these major universities, the students are going to lean left. I mean, who was the one that said, if you're 20 and not liberal, you have no heart. If you're 40 and not conservative, you have no brain. So we know they're going to lean left. But, they condemned the Georgia law, told them how bad it was. And then the individual, Addison Smith from Campus Reform, talked about the aspects of what was in the new Georgia law, talking about new legislation going around, which would require weekend early voting for 2 Saturdays instead of just 1, giving counties the option to expand early voting on 2 Sundays, clarify voting hours, ban electioneering with 100 feet. And sure enough, they all said, oh, yeah, now that would be good. That would be good. We need that. Then they were told, well, that is the Georgia election law. Oh, never mind. 561-8255. Ernie is on the line. Hey, Ernie.
Hey, man, listen. Yeah, and as far as the transgender stuff, man, it's just no way, in my opinion. I just can't even believe the ignorance of that.
Well, it could affect East Carolina baseball if this goes through, as it looks like.
Yeah, man. But you gotta stand on some principles somewhere, man.
Thank you.
Trying to hurt people in their pocketbooks or what? It's all about the money. Follow the money. People that cave, that's usually what it's over, is the money. But, man, if you're a real true conservative, you need to stand your ground and say what it is and stick with it. That's the way I see it anyway.
I agree completely with you, Ernie. Absolutely.
Exactly. So I'll get out of here and let somebody out there, man. It's the first time caller. I love your show, man.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate it. 561-8255 if you want to join us. Should I ask Ernie who he likes in the Republican primary? Big news out of Minnesota and the other shooting, which happened in Minnesota. Kim Potter, the female police officer, 48 years old. She was the one who thought she was tasing the suspect. And instead of pulling out her taser, she pulled out her gun and shot the individual who was resisting arrest, and she has resigned, and now apparently the chief of police has also resigned from the Brooklyn Center. Police Chief Tim Gannon has also resigned. The victim, Mr. Wright, 20 years old, stopped during a traffic stop. Police officers were arresting him and tried to get away. She thought he was tasing them. She shot him. He died later. And now they're burning down Minnesota, or at least Minneapolis. What's even more bizarre about this, The Brooklyn Center city manager, a guy named Kurt Bogani, was fired yesterday late in the day because he called for due process for the police officer involved, Kim Potter. That's all he said. All he said was, we need to allow for due process. And the mayor, Mike Elliott, fired him, got rid of him, because he called for due process. So this is, understand, we are now being ruled by anarchy. The inmates are truly in charge of the asylum. We're being ruled by anarchy. We're not following the rule of law. There is another story related to this out of Baltimore again, where they want to defund the police. Rashida Tlaib, the member of the squad, says policing can't be reformed. So therefore, we need to get rid of the police. We need to get rid of the court system. We need to get rid of the prison system. Anytime something bad happens that fits into the prevailing liberal media narrative, it's milked for every last drop of outrage, and facts that contradict the accepted narrative are downplayed or outright ignored, so says PJ Media. For example, whenever a white cop kills a black person, it's proof that American is irredeemably racist, and it justifies the now enviable, mostly peaceful rioting, according to the media. In case you hadn't noticed, the office building where these lawmakers work in Washington, D.C., where, again, Tlaib works, it's completely surrounded with fencing, completely surrounded with military, completely surrounded with armed guards. And yet, the squad, Tlaib, Presley, Ilhan Omar, AOC, they're all wanting to defund the police completely. Just get rid of the police. I mean, just completely get rid of the police. 561-8255. Who do we have? Craig. Welcome, sir.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I want to offer my opinion on this voter ID thing, and I know you enjoy biblical. I know you enjoy biblical references, so I will offer you one. Is where I think this is going. The camel's nose is under the tent.
Oh, yeah.
And they won't stop with no voter ID. Next thing it'll be, they'll say registration is racist. They're going to throw everything they can to make it anybody can walk in the polls, registered or not, and can vote whatever they want. They might even start going for a 3-month early voting cycle. It's going to be ridiculous. But this is coming, and you can record this and play it back. I guarantee it. They are going to go this direction if they push back hard enough on this whole voter ID thing.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I was talking about another issue the other day, and I said pretty much the same thing that you just said, because liberals will never be satisfied. No matter that, they'll push and push, and no matter what you do, or if you give in, they say, oh, we got them now. We're going to push it a little further. You're absolutely right. It will not end with whatever they say they want. They will immediately go to the next piece on their list. And I mean, the other thing you got to remember too is what they want is they want to push the whole system a mile to the left. That's what they say, but they'll settle for 100 yards to the left. And but when they get that, then they'll come back and they want to take another 100 yards. And their agenda is such that they'll keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And whenever a conservative comes up with the lame brain idea that if I give in to them and negotiate with them, they'll be satisfied, they're crazy. Because you're absolutely right. It won't end with this.
Well, you can't negotiate with terrorists.
Yeah. And that's what they are.
Damn right.
That's what they are.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir.
Right,
appreciate the call. 561-8255. So, yeah, I started to say up in Baltimore, the city of violence, which, I mean, that was the area that I grew up in, right outside of Baltimore. And it's worse now than it ever was when I was a kid. And it wasn't good then. But they want to slash the police budget up there. It's interesting. A Gallup poll released in August of 2020 showed that 81% of black Americans want police presence in their communities. They want it the same, or they want it to increase. And this was after the George Floyd shooting. But Democrats have pretty much come out and again, this is a Democratic-controlled city. In fact, Maryland is a Democratic-controlled state, although they do have a rhino for a governor. Republicans in the state house have put forth a Violent Firearms Offender Act, which would have ratcheted up punishment for crimes committed with a gun. The Democrats wouldn't pass that, but they did pass additional legislation which it makes it harder for legal citizens to buy a firearm. So, again, recognize that it's, they can talk about all they want about how, they need gun control, but they don't want gun control for the felons. They don't want the gun controls. They don't want punishment for the people that actually commit the crimes with the guns. They don't want the law-abiding citizens to have the guns. Explain that one to me. We got to take another time out. Stay with us. When we get back, there is I would say, middle of the road to conservative sports journalist who has been barred from Twitter because he questioned the ethics of Black Lives Matter. He's been put in Twitter jail. We'll have that when we get back.
back to News and Views. Talk 96.3 and 103.7.
All right, welcome back in. And by the way, News and Views is now on YouTube, so you can... easiest way to get there is to go to encnewsandviews.com, our webpage, and at the top you'll see YouTube live stream link. Go there. You can watch it live, or you can go there whenever you want and watch the replay of it. So Clark Willis, our crack producer, set that up for us. The Daily Mail is reporting a prominent black sports journalist barred from Twitter for the crime of discussing the $1.4 million house bought by a Black Lives Matter co-founder. We talked about this yesterday. Jason Whitlock, 53. Now, I've only heard this guy talk about sports, but he reminds me a lot of Charles Barkley. He just has some good common sense. And anyway, he was talking on a YouTube interview, and the individual he was talking with was this whole thing with Patrisse Cullors came up, and he simply questioned how she was spending this money and what appears to be malfeasance. And for that, Twitter put him in Twitter jail.
The background is I actually saw it someplace else on Friday and posted a link to, her buying this $1.4 million house in Topanga or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I went and looked up that the house cost $1.4 million, and Topanga has a black population of 1.4%.
Black Lives Matter, but I don't want to live around you, Negroes.
You think there's a bunch of black cops in this area? And so she gonna have plenty of white cops and white people to complain about. And so I just find it hypocritical. And so I posted the link and said she's with her people. You had called me at some point, or we had talked some point Friday, like, hey, they just put me in Twitter jail over my tweet from Thursday. And I was like, man, they ain't done nothing to me, but let's wait and see. And so by the end of the day, Friday, I was in Twitter jail.
So that was an interview. Again, that was Jason Whitlock. The guy that was doing the interview was a guy named Curtis Schoon. And he made the best comment of all. He said, yeah, Black Lives Matter, but I don't want to live with you Negroes. So, and again, these are two black men talking about the Patrisse Cullors, who was one of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter. And she bought a house in an area in which only 1.4% of the population is black. But Black Lives Matter. Yeah, there you go. But he's now in Twitter jail. He went on to say that, if I want to get out of Twitter jail, I've got to delete the tweet. And then 12 hours later, I'm out of Twitter jail. He said, I'm not going to do it. Look, there was nothing that I said that was wrong. Whitlock said BLM founders like Cullors were making millions of dollars off the backs of these dead black men who said they wouldn't spit on them if they were on fire and they were alive. I'm just telling you what Jason Whitlock said. Don't get upset with me, but I would tend to agree that these people, race baiting is a big moneymaker. It's a huge moneymaker. Look at Al Sharpton. Look at Jesse Jackson. They've made lifelong careers out of race baiting. Wee Willie Barber, he's doing the same thing. Patrisse Cullors is doing the same thing. And making millions of dollars. By the way, BLM, Patrisse Cullors, they are now giving the reason for this backlash against Black Lives Matter and Patrisse Cullors. Why the uproar? It's because of white supremacists. Don't you know? There is nothing wrong according to Black Lives Matter, there's nothing wrong with what Kohlers has done. There's nothing wrong with her benefiting from the fruits of her labors. And it's a right-wing offensive which continues a tradition of terror by white supremacists. So they just double down. Hey, we need a good rationale. I mean, it sort of worked for Hillary Clinton. Now, she never made it to the presidency, but, according to Hillary, it was a great right-wing conspiracy. According to Kohlers, it's a great right-wing conspiracy, and throw in a little white supremacy in there, and that'll all work out. In the latest Project Veritas Sting video, which was released today, CNN technical director Charlie Chester admits his network used propaganda in an effort to ensure that President Donald Trump would lose the 2020 election. Chester takes credit for Trump's loss and confesses that the network created at least one story that was all speculation in order to defeat the president. He also says that as soon as the COVID-19 pandemic tapers off, CNN plans to milk climate alarmists for all it's worth. Look what we did. We got, speaking of CNN, we got Trump out. I'm 100% going to say it, and I 100% believe that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have gotten voted out, Chester told Project Veritas's undercover journalists in the Sting video. I came to CNN because I wanted to be a part of that, he said. The director discusses at least one situation where CNN intentionally crafted a story questioning Trump's health, a story that amounted to what he said as propaganda. Cut 2.
Yeah, I mean, like Trump, we did it. Like when Trump was, I don't know, like his hand was shaking or whatever like that. We brought in like so many medical people to like all tell a story that like it was all speculation. That he was like neurological damage, like that he was losing it. He's unfit to, whatever. We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about. So that's I think that's propaganda. We had nothing else to run with at that time. We were like just taking shots off the bow, just hoping something would hit.
So in other words, he admits that it's propaganda. Nothing there. Bring in, quote, medical experts to speak the narrative. He goes on to say that when it came to Joe Biden, and they wanted a shot of Joe Biden, they'd find some video of Joe Biden jogging. By the way, they hardly covered, they might have mentioned it, but they hardly covered Joe Biden falling on the steps of Air Force One. They would, and this is a quote from this individual, Charlie Chester, we would always show shots of Biden jogging and that he's healthy, him in his aviator shades, like you paint him as a young geriatric. You got the geriatric part right. Chester admits that CNN's office has fatigue about COVID-19 pandemic, so like whenever a new story comes up, they're going to latch on to it. Why would anybody believe CNN? Now, conservatives don't. And listen, all the flack that Donald Trump got, talking about Jim Acosta and fake news, and now CNN basically admits, yeah, we're fake news. On Sunday, CNN published a report relying on anonymous sources alleging that President Trump denied Representative Matt Gaetz a meeting at Mar-a-Lago. According to the report, Gaetz tried to schedule a visit with Trump after it was first revealed that he was being investigated, but the request was rejected by aides close to the former president who have urged Trump not to stick his neck out to defend Gaetz. Gaetz spokesman Harlan Hill told CNN there's no such meeting. Representative Gaetz was welcomed to Trump Doral this week and has not sought a meeting with President Trump himself, Hill said. Jason Miller, an aide to the president, denied the report Sunday evening on Twitter. Trump issued his own statement Monday evening. Fake news, CNN relying on all anonymous sources, meaning they probably made the whole thing up. Wrote a very dishonest story claiming Congressman Matt Gaetz asking for a meeting with me at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, was denied. This is completely false. And yet, CNN refused to cover the Eric Swalwell story. Trump pointed this out. Why didn't you cover Eric Swalwell? And he was sleeping with a Chinese spy, and yet he is still on the Intelligence Committee. Why don't you cover that, CNN? Because you got an agenda. That wouldn't fit your agenda. We got to take another time out when we get back. Nancy Pelosi and insider trading. I mean, there have been Republicans that have gone to prison in recent years. And for insider trading, will Nancy go there? Don't hold your breath.
Back to the show that really makes you think.
He is a genius.
He's all powerful.
He brought a kind of heat.
He could be the best.
Just don't hurt yourself, okay? More news and views on Talk 96.3 and 103.7.
So, Fox Business News is reporting that Nancy Pelosi's husband purchased millions of dollars worth of Microsoft and Roblox shares last month, according to new financial disclosures. Since Pelosi made the purchase, again, this is Nancy's husband, since he made the purchase, Microsoft shares have climbed from about $230 a share to $255 a share, an increase close to 11%, which means the purchase of the shares, because he didn't actually, he purchased the shares, but he also purchased stock options, which would have increased an incredible amount more. But just the stock price itself increased by 11%. And this increase came, he bought them, the increase came after the company secured a lucrative government contract worth nearly $22 billion to supply U.S. Army combat troops with headsets. The deal was announced on March the 31st. So do you suppose? No, Nancy wouldn't have any insight. You know what? Speaker of the House, I wonder if she knew about that. I wonder if she told her husband, yeah, you know, maybe we ought to buy that.
I just had my hair washed.
Yeah, well, that's your excuse. Remember, back in January of 2020, the congressman from New York, Chris Collins, Republican, he and his son purchased some shares of a pharmaceutical company. They were working on some medicine, and it didn't pass the trials. He found out about it, called up his son, and said, son, go out and sell that stock. It's going to crash. Because he found out ahead of time, before it was made public, that the certain trial, what they were trying to get through and approved by the FDA, didn't make it. And sure enough, when that was announced, the stock crashed. They caught Chris Collins doing that. He admitted to it. He's in prison right now. He was sentenced to 26 months in prison. What is the difference between that and if Nancy Pelosi told her husband? Now, I'm sure Nancy wouldn't do anything like that, right? Don't hold your breath. Pelosi, a California Democrat, is worth an estimated $114 million, according to her 2018 personal financial disclosure, making her the 6th richest member of the House of Representatives and the 10th richest overall, according to data tracked by the Center for Responsive Politics.
I will do anything.
You'll do anything to get a buck. By the way, crazy Joe Biden has now offered any federal employee, if you want to take 4 months off to go take care of individual children coming across the border, he'll give you a paid 4 months to take care of kids. Now, I don't know if you can take care of them down at the border or take care of them in your home. He must be pretty desperate. Things must be pretty bad. Of course, I don't know. Maybe he's figuring, well, they don't do a lot when they're there anyway. Hey, thanks for being with us. We'll do it again tomorrow at 5 o'clock. We'll see you then. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, all right, all right.